crush your enemies.
They drew first blood, not me.
See them driven before you.
Oh, my user.
And hear the lamentation of your women.
But I pity the fool.
Glitter in the dark near the 10-house gate.
Oh no.
They're here.
Oh, real light sleeper, child.
Welcome to Vintage Video, where we're rewatching the 80s so you don't have to. We'll be reviewing every major film release of the 1980s in chronological order, overanalyzing what you've seen and spoiling what you haven't. I'm Patrick O'Reilly.
I'm Jesse Bayless.
And I'm Richard Wells.
And today we're discussing Some Kind of Hero, released April 2nd, 1982. It was written by Robert Boris and James Kirkwood Jr., based on the novel by Kirkwood Jr., directed by Michael Pressman, and released by Paramount Pictures. Haley Atwell was born April 5th, 3 days after this film was released. Happy birthday, Haley Atwell.
Who's Haley Atwell?
The love interest in the Captain America movies?
Peggy Carter.
Yeah, Peggy
Oh,
Carter.
okay.
James Kirkwood's novel Some Kind of Hero was published in 1975, and Paramount quickly optioned it for a feature film adaptation. They spent several years attempting to cast someone resembling the book's central character, namely a white man in his 20s, but Paramount president Don Simpson was a big fan of Richard Pryor's work and sent him a flat-out offer. Pryor agreed on the condition of directorial approval, and after a few contentious interactions, he approved Michael Pressman to helm the project. The script got basically a page-one rewrite from the original author and screenwriter Robert Boris to cater to Pryor's comedic strengths, and I think this was a mistake. This should have either stayed a dramatic film or stayed an unproduced screenplay. Or a book. You don't even have to take Pryor out of it. He handled straight drama quite well last year in Bustin' Loose. I feel like this didn't need to be comedy at all.
Yeah.
The extensive rewrites refocused the plot from the POW camp to Eddie's experiences back home. They excised a gay subplot, expanded the part of the film's high-end prostitute character, and then awkwardly plugged in a dozen or so jokes per scene.
I mean, it shows. It does feel very piecemeal.
Yeah, it feels rewritten. This all happened in a rush, too, because the DGA was threatening to strike, so they had to get the expected 60-day shoot underway as quickly as possible. They shot 6 days a week to meet the suspected deadline, and at the last minute, the DGA reached an agreement and avoided the strike after all. The Vietnam scenes were filmed at Indian Dunes in Valencia, California, which previously doubled for Nam on the podcast in The Exterminator cold open, where that guy's head gets cut off. Mm-hmm. The film opened wide after a successful test screening, and the premiere doubled as a charity event for the Foundation for Burn Research in the wake of Richard Pryor's near-fatal self-immolation in the summer of 1980. On a budget of $8 million, it collected nearly $24 million at the box office, despite middling reviews. It was a good year for Pryor, though. He had a stand-up special in theaters the same year, and then later he came back with The Toy, which also did well.
Yeah.
We open the film in Vietnam. Richard Pryor, as Eddie, moves with his platoon along a riverbed for literally their first day on patrol.
Nothing can happen to us on the first day out, right?
Just like AIT.
Right. Just like AIT.
The men are hit with a heavy bombing run. Eddie tries to radio for reinforcements, but Kowalski, another soldier from his platoon, is complaining that he has to take a shit and he's too scared to stand up. Instead of just pooping where he is, he decides to run away, and Eddie chases after him until the man disappears in another explosion. Do you guys recall the last time we saw a Kowalski explode? It wasn't the Penguins movie.
Was it a war movie?
He was driving a car.
Oh.
A white 1970 Dodge
Yeah.
Challenger. He crashed it into a pair of bulldozers blocking the road.
Maybe.
Or did he? Maybe he tucked and rolled and he survived the crash.
Vanish?
Vanishing point.
Vanishing. Yeah. That's it.
Eddie, not accepting that his friend is dead, tries to lure Kowalski back by claiming to have found a good place to take a crap and dropping his pants just in time to be taken prisoner by 3 Viet Cong soldiers. He motions he wants to pull his pants up, but they shoot at the dirt by his feet and force him to march with his pants around his ankles.
I'm reaching for my pants. My pants. I am reaching for my pants. Pocket, fuck the pants. All right, I understand.
I was surprised at the gratuitous use of fuck in this movie.
Yeah, because it's a hard R from the get-go.
Yeah, I was like, okay, this is...
Yeah.
Because there's really nothing else that's that bad.
Well, there's some stuff later that you couldn't do in a PG-13 movie either.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the other side of the spectrum, not language, but graphic sexual stuff.
It is, yeah.
But let's pause for a second to talk about the tone of the film so far. Because at first it looks like it's going to be like a Stripes in the Army Now thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly everyone is dead. His whole platoon has been murdered. And he goes right back to a standard Army comedy like, oh, my pants are around my ankles. This is so funny. And then he gets taken prisoner and marched into a prisoner of war camp. And it's like, what is this movie? Like, I had such a hard time grappling with the tone of it already. Does he know that his friend is dead? Because he's talking to his friend. So is he like in shock and he's in denial?
I think so. But I also think that, you know, we talk about how great it would be if we did these wild like tonal shifts in movies, and then you see it and you complain about it.
That's true. But I just couldn't get a grasp on what they wanted me, how they wanted me to react to what's happening to this character.
Yeah, I'll agree that this movie fluctuates between comedy and drama, and sometimes I question, this is kind of a questionable moment, but after that I feel like we're going into a very serious bout of the movie.
So for this first act, the rest of the first act, and then it goes back to being a comedy, and just keeps going back and forth, and I just felt like I had a tricky time navigating it. But it's weird because the book is just a straight drama the whole time. There's never a funny moment in the book, and the novelist came back to co-write the screenplay. But the screenplay also changed a lot in production. But it's like, how happy could he have been with this that's like taking my very serious POW camp story and turning it into all jokes?
I don't think they did. Like, I don't think I had as hard a time watching this film as you did. It has very serious moments, and it has just goofy moments, and that's just fine.
I don't know. I guess it was just my own problem with trying to go back and forth between them, that I felt like they didn't feel like they were in the same universe.
I didn't have a problem with it tonally. I think it was a little like hodgepodgey in terms of like the focus of the movie.
Yeah, that too.
But tonally, I'm okay with it going back and forth.
Yeah.
I just think I agree with both of you in the sense that I feel like this opening is setting it up for one type of movie from what the movie actually is later. Because I also didn't have a hard time watching this movie, but I feel like there's a mislead in the beginning of, I gotta take a shit, man. It was played too funny, not like in a moment of like terror, like oh man, like he's freaking out. And
the fact that his friend died and that he was still walking around with his pants off talking about taking a crap, and it's like, you're just there by yourself now. This is weird. But anyway, he gets marched into the prison camp. We get a quick montage of him writing in chalk on the wall to indicate he's been here for multiple Christmases now. One day, a mouse gets into his cell, and he shares a picture of his wife Lisa back home. During one of his nightly meals, Captain Ty enters his cell with paperwork.
Isn't it time for you to sign the confession, Corporal Keller?
Oh, Corporal Keller's gonna wait.
For what?
I'm gonna wait for the rescue.
Sometime later, Eddie hears a struggle in the hallway, and another prisoner, Vinnie, played by Ray Sharkey, is dragged into his cell. Vinnie does a lot of shouting, as Ray Sharkey is wont to do, and Eddie tells him to calm down as though he had no reason to be upset. Like, he's very like nonchalant, like, why are you so mad? And it's like, I'm in a prison camp. I literally just got captured.
If anything, he should be mad that he went from a single to a double real quick.
Right, exactly. Eddie makes an awkward first impression by explaining that he has a pet mouse named Spike, and all the shouting will scare it away.
You touch him and I'll kill you.
But I don't think we ever see the mouse again.
Yeah.
So for all Vinnie knows, it doesn't even exist. We flash forward to the next Christmas overseas, and Eddie explains it's his 5th one away from home. Sometime later, Captain Ty presents Sharkey with the same confession papers, and he basically tells them to shove it up their asses. He's enraged when he sees Eddie bowing to their demands and signing the paper.
Who is Mr. Mioff?
Oh, I forgot to put down my first name. It's Jack.
Jack Mioff?
Jack me off!
In the middle of the night, soldiers burst into their cell and drag Vinnie away to solitary. Sometime later, Eddie hears Vinnie in the box in the yard complaining that his legs don't work, and Eddie challenges one of the guards to a basketball game to get his friend out of solitary.
So I get the impression that he didn't know that his buddy was taken to solitary. He just knew he was taken away.
Sure. Yeah,
didn't
that
know
makes
what
sense.
happened to him. And then he discovered him a while later in solitary.
And he's been atrophying in this box.
Right.
To
And
the
now
point
he's
that his
like,
legs don't work.
I got to do something about this.
Yeah. As soon as Eddie starts scoring points in the basketball game, the guard starts socking him in the gut to get an advantage, and when Eddie fights back, he's quickly buried in angry guards. That night, Vinnie is returned to the cell with Eddie. The book adapted into this film contains almost no comedic elements, and when the men are reunited here, they establish a homosexual relationship with each other, but that was dropped from the film. And they also aren't supposed to leave this camp until the 90% mark. Like, it was literally, most of the book is just about them here living with each other and taking care of each other.
And I feel like that might have been better. Like
I
a better
think so,
movie just to
yeah.
stay consistent.
Also, not to drag people's personal preferences into it, but Richard Pryor was pretty famously bi. I
Yeah.
feel like you could keep this cast and
Yeah.
still do that story. At the same time, a voice on the radio reports that peace talks are underway and close to complete. Unfortunately, Vinnie is shivering and doesn't look like he'll survive the night. Eddie screams for a doctor to help his friend and even offers to sign his confession papers. The next day, he signs the papers claiming that the Vietnam conflict was an unjust and illegal war, and he wasn't coerced into signing, and Captain Ty ships Vinnie off to a hospital.
I am a man of my word, Corporal Keller. I'm only doing what I must for my country.
Maybe I don't necessarily know how I would have felt at the time, but I'm like, yeah, I would have signed that
Yeah.
right away, guys.
Like,
This was an unjust war. What the shit are we doing here?
it's like, what, wasn't it though? Technically, like, you're not asking me to sign like a lie. This didn't make sense for us to be here. Eddie picked a weird time to sign these papers though, because it seems like he was literally shipped home the same day they took Vinnie to a hospital. They'd probably be on this plane together if he hadn't done that.
What happens to Vinnie?
He dies.
He dies.
Yeah.
But do we know that for
Yeah,
sure?
Yeah.
Does
Yeah,
he-
they mention
They
it.
say that
Yeah,
he's dead.
we'll come to it when we find out.
Oh, okay. Then I completely missed
I mean, we
that
don't
part.
see him again, so you're not really spoiling anything, because that
No,
was
no,
the
no.
last we'll see
That
of
was the
Ray
last
Sharkey.
we saw of him. And as far as I know, that was the last we heard of him. I feel like I missed a line somewhere.
I think you did, yeah.
And I was waiting for him to return the whole rest of the movie.
Well, that's
Like, turns out he's the gangster character from Arizona.
yeah. Until that line comes up, what I predicted that how this movie was going to go was this confession was going to come to bite him in the ass,
Right, yeah.
and then they were going to, it was going to get drawn out, and
Yeah.
then Vinnie was going to show up and
Yeah.
say, "No,
He saved me.
he saved my life."
That's
Right.
what I.
But,
That's
yeah.
exactly how I thought this movie was going
But
to play out.
instead, he's just dead that
He's
same
just
day.
dead. But also, in my mind, he's too big of an actor to just disappear. Like, I'm like, he's been in a lot of movies. Like, why would you only be in a third of a movie and then not be in the rest of it?
Yeah. Well, I think this was kind of like on his way out a little bit in terms of Ray Sharkey's
Yeah.
being the lead character of a movie regularly. On the flight to America, Eddie is approached by Ronny Cox as Colonel Powers. Eddie is apparently the only POW on the flight. Powers has Eddie's file on hand and offers to update him on the situation at home.
Look, I've got some notes here. Information on your mother, your wife, your daughter. I don't have a daughter, sir. Oh, yes, you do, Ed.
Turns out Lisa was pregnant when he left, and he has a 6-year-old daughter named Lori at home. He's obviously ecstatic to learn of his daughter and screams about it loud enough for the entire plane to be excited for him.
Her name's Lori.
Lord Jesus Christ. I got a daughter named Lord Jesus fucking Christ.
How about that beer now, Eddie?
Ow! Yeah, I want a beer. I got a daughter!
From the plane, they're driven directly to Stillwell Army Medical Center. In addition to being the only POW on the flight, he was also one of the last Army men out of the country at all. He's received at the hospital with a red carpet and a bevy of press. They ask Eddie how it feels to be back, and he has trouble putting it into words. He assures them he has no hatred for anyone after this experience, and he's excited enough to kiss the ground. They encourage him to actually do it for the photo op, and he does. In a private room at the hospital, Eddie is reunited with his wife Lisa. Colonel Powers claims he can take all the time he needs in this room, but then interrupts moments later to drag him to another meeting. It already seems like the point will be that they promise him things and then don't deliver on them. After his checkup, the medical team determine he has anemia and needs dental work, but should be good to head home in about 10 days. Colonel Powers tells Eddie that he's free to do what he likes until 1200 hours tomorrow. Eddie hops in a cab and takes his wife to the Ambassador Hotel for the night. Up in the room, they have champagne, and Lisa dresses in a kimono that Eddie bought her, but they don't seem to have any real chemistry, and she rushes him awkwardly into bed. She races to intoxicate herself by finishing off the champagne almost single-handedly.
Lisa, you a little drunk? Why do you have to be drunk to be with me?
It's clear something's bothering her. It turns out she couldn't make it 6 years without him, and she's fallen in love with another man. His first response is to run to the bathroom and throw up. She claims to have explained all this in the letters that he apparently never got. He punches the wall beside her head and screams in her face.
It's 2 years ago, Eddie. Bitch!
Beyond learning that Lisa is now living with Ray, her new boyfriend, she also updates him on the bookstore Eddie left for her to take care of. She and Ray tried to add a card shop expansion to the store, and the place went bankrupt.
I was waiting this whole time to find out that it's not actually his daughter.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
But we don't reveal that at all
Yeah.
because like he didn't know she was pregnant. Like we don't even address the issue. He just throughout the whole film we're just like, yep, it's his daughter, but he never gets to meet her.
Yeah, I mean, he gets to, he chooses not to. So in the 6 years he was gone, he has so far lost his wife and his livelihood. Richard Pryor spends the rest of the scene doing his laughing, crying face, and it doesn't really fit the scene at all. I think people just didn't know how to direct dramatic scenes with comedians at the time, so he's constantly clowning around when he should be normal sad.
Not just his business, but they spent all the money that he was sending or that she had access to from his service.
Well, he didn't get the money from his service yet.
Well, you still get money. Like,
you get it, but it's in an account. She hasn't spent it.
But okay, but whatever money he had for her.
Yeah, correct.
I think at this point, Una was watching the movie with me, and she was also very confused by his face because she's like, is he laughing or is he crying? I'm like, I think it's both.
Well, he does this in a lot of movies where he does the laugh cry face, but usually it's in straight comedies, and the point is like, it's so sad that it's funny now, but here it's like, it's not funny. What's happening to you is not funny.
Wow, but it's a coping mechanism.
Yeah,
right?
I guess, yeah. She asks him for a divorce, and he laugh cries some more. Sometime later, Lisa mentions for the first time that on top of everything else, Eddie's mother had a stroke while he was gone. For some reason, it's played like a hilarious comedic moment and Richard Pryor dances around on the bed screaming for his mama. But it's just sad. The next day, Eddie is sent to an army psychiatrist, and when the doctor asks what concerns Eddie has, he goes back to the laugh cry, and it's just as annoying to me as it was in the last scene. Eventually, the psychiatrist is coaxed into laughing with him for some reason.
The joke, quote unquote joke of this scene is that he's been a POW
for 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
Is like, is there anything, and you feel like you have any feelings about that? And
No, we're good. I'll head out.
And I think he's laughing because he sees the absurdity of having to ask that question.
Right, that makes sense. We cut now to Greystone Nursing Home as Eddie arrives with flowers. He's recognized on his way in by a woman named Hilda Munson, who offers to lead him to his mother. On the way to his mother, Eddie learns that the convalescence home hasn't been paid in 3 months, but he's owed back pay from the army, and he'll soon make things right. Munson also informs him the prices are changing soon, and the cost will be $1,200 a month.
And that's $80.
That's a lot of money. Based on the stated pay of $5 a day times 5 years, Eddie is owed around $9,125, which, assuming this takes place in 1972, is around $70,000 after inflation. He's introduced to a nurse named Monica Lewis, who says she'll help him understand his mother since it's harder after the stroke. When he sees her, she's a bit squinty on one side, but clearly happy to be reunited with her son.
Speaking of throwing out the gay relationship, I thought for sure that that's where this was going.
The nurse and her?
Well, yeah, that is Anne Heaney.
Yeah.
I thought for sure like that was going to be a thing is like that. We've been together for, since before her stroke. I was waiting for that line to come up.
Because it is weird that there's 2 caregivers that he's being transferred between.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You look nice, Mama.
Shit.
Shit. I thought you couldn't talk, Mama.
Wouldn't you know that's her one good word?
After about a minute with his mother, he says he has to leave to call his wife. A few steps away, he breaks down leaning against a tree in the yard, and Monica Lewis stops to check on him. Here's a chance for them to delve into what he's feeling about all these changes, but instead, we cut away to him getting dental work and another ill-fitting comedy moment. Eddie has run through a battery of medical tests, and all the while he asks for back pay, or at least an advance on it, since he has no money to spend on surviving. Eventually, Eddie is brought to a conference and confronted with the contract he signed. He explains that he was coerced by the camp's refusal to treat Vinnie DeAngelo's illness, and for the first time here, we learn that Vinnie did not survive his illness, and signing the contract did no good anyway.
I think he should have defended himself more vehemently about being coerced, but he doesn't. They basically say, "Were you tortured?" And
he says, "My friend was dying," or something.
And he said, "Well, it was." He basically says it was like torture for me to watch my friend be dying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so like I feel like he's excusing himself from being like coerced into this. It's like no. Yes, you were coerced into signing this to try to save a man's life. Like tell them more directly. Yes, I was.
They were going to let another prisoner die if I didn't sign the paperwork. That's coercion.
Yes. But I just like I'm frustrated in this moment that he doesn't
Defend
defend
the
his
decision.
position
Yeah.
more than he's like, well, my friend was dying. I had to. You know, like it just
There's a lot of things like he would have some kind of representative with him.
Right.
Like this, Colonel Powers, I don't know what he is in this. Like, I don't know what his job is because he certainly doesn't seem like he's defending Eddie in this. He just seems like he's
like
there.
a liaison.
He actually feels like he's turning on him in this moment because after this point, he's not helpful at all.
I think he just knows how much red tape there is and there's no point in bothering.
Yeah. And I also wonder if they're flat out saying that he's forfeited his claim to the back pay by signing the contract, or if they're just not going to cooperate and it's up to him to fight really hard to get his money. Because they can't withhold your money just because you signed a piece of paper that says, I don't think that it was fair to send me here.
Yeah, they don't really explain how.
It's not like he's a traitor to the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's literally just signing a paper that says, this wasn't fair, sending me to Vietnam to fight people.
He signed a document from a country that the United States doesn't recognize.
Right, yeah.
Shouldn't be valid.
See the letterhead here? This isn't real.
We also I don't think we ever state whether or not, he was drafted or enlisted. So it's just like, he might not have had a choice but to go.
Yeah, that's true. We don't really delve into that.
Yeah, well, he certainly seems like he doesn't want to be there. He definitely seems like nervous and kind of scared.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh man, so I feel like probably drafting is more likely.
That makes sense.
And I also thought that this movie was going in a very different direction at this point too, where his first day out in Vietnam, he gets bombed, he gets put in a POW camp, he's there for ages. So he's never really done anything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And even the title, like Some Kind of Hero, you think that basically he's coming home.
There's going to be like the movie
and
Hero, where it's like he's celebrated for something he didn't do.
He's celebrated, but he's just like, I didn't fight. I just sat in a cell for 5 years, and then you come back and you call me a hero, and then it comes out that you signed this paperwork, and then
suddenly I'm a villain.
And then people turn on him, and I'm like, that would be a good plot for this movie, but none of that happens.
Well, yeah, and I thought for sure that this was going to be made public.
Yeah.
Like this document he
and
signed.
the public was going to turn on him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and this is also why I kept coming to you every 20 or so minutes and going, so I'm this far into the movie and I'm not sure what it's about yet. I thought it was going to be about a guy, like a war comedy, and then I was like, okay, it's a very serious movie, it turns out, and they're in a POW camp and his friend is dying. Oh, but now it's a joke about how everything in his life is screwed up and he can't survive on the outside.
Yeah.
Oh, but now it's about how he betrayed his country and they're going to withhold all of his money and he's literally going to end up in jail by the end of this or something.
Just wait for our meet cute.
Right, yeah. Eddie argues with Colonel Powers to do the right thing and get him his money before his mom is thrown out on the street, and then he storms out of the military base. He goes to the bank for a loan and they turn him down because he has no collateral. He has no home, no car, no job, no stocks. Didn't you have a home before? I guess someone else moved into it and you're just not welcome anymore. The banker tells him he's out of luck, but he insists today is his lucky day. And on the way out of the bank, 2 men with guns come in to rob the place, and he recognizes one as a fellow soldier from Vietnam. Or at least they know someone in common.
No, so the soldier recognizes his uniform and division.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, did you work with Iron Balls, whoever? Hours later, the press interview famous war hero Eddie Keller about his experience during the bank robbery, and every time he tries to bring up his own personal struggles, they repeatedly restart the broadcast because nobody cares.
I was in the bank. I was trying to get a loan, and it got robbed. I couldn't get the loan because they said I didn't have enough things on my checklist.
Okay, cut it.
They have,
Dave.
Sounds okay.
You think you can give us the information on the robbery, okay? I think that's what the people want to hear.
After a few takes, Eddie has finally shortened his account of the robbery to their satisfaction.
It was robbed.
That's it?
That's it.
We cut to Eddie watching the broadcast on a television in a bar. He asks the bartender to shut it off, and the guy does. Now, more than halfway through the movie, we're introduced to the secondary lead, Margot Kidder, as a woman at the bar in a high-neck, lacy blouse, sipping her wine a few bar stools over. Suddenly, Eddie is flanked by 2 men who seem ready to fight.
Jesus, that was a stupid thing to say.
What are they talking about? He didn't say anything to them.
The broadcast.
All he said was, it got robbed.
Yeah, but they were just making fun of his TV appearance.
But it's like, he barely said anything. They wouldn't even let him say more than that. So literally all he could say was, it got robbed, and they came over and said, that was dumb that you said that.
Those guys didn't see the 3 other takes.
Yeah, but I feel like it would have made more sense if he'd said something dumb in the broadcast. And that was why he asked them to turn it off. And that's why these guys came over. But he didn't say anything dumb. All he said was, the bank was robbed. That was it. I feel like that might just be like a vestigial thing where he had said something different and then they changed it and then forgot to change what they say to him.
I disagree with you. The lady said, hey, tell me about the bank robbery. And you're like, it was a robbery. You're like, yeah, that's kind of a stupid response.
So you would cross the bar and pick on the guy?
No, well, I'm not saying I would, but I'm not saying what they said was unreasonable. I think that when somebody asks you to elaborate on the events of a story and you just reiterate that it happened.
Yeah.
And there's no additional details, that's kind of a dumb response.
Plus, these guys are just drunk bar cronies, you know, like they're just looking to hassle
their
somebody.
insults don't have to make sense. They're just trying to pick a fight. They make fun of him for wearing his full military uniform to the bar and accuse him of single-handedly losing the Vietnam War by being stoned over there. They claim he'll never find a woman dressed this way. Margot Kidder interrupts their bullying.
I mean, how do you expect to find any action around here looking like that, huh?
You just found it, schmuck.
Even the bartender's on Eddie's side, and he raises a billy club to threaten the men, demanding they leave right now. Do you guys recall the last time we saw a bartender threaten a prospective customer with a billy club? A guy was trying to buy a beer for an underage kid.
Oh, yeah, the one where Jack Nicholson drives cross country.
That's right.
Private something? No, Last Detail.
There you go.
Yeah.
See, I thought it was going to be that Parasite, or what was the one, the 3D monster movie?
Yeah, that's Parasite.
Yeah, but he had a gun. He didn't have a billy club.
Okay,
yeah.
I thought I couldn't remember what he had. I knew he had something behind the bar.
Yeah. Margot admits she knows who Eddie is.
You know, that's the second time I saw you on television. I saw you kissing the ground.
Oh, Jesus.
She introduces herself as Toni Donovan. She invites him home with her, and as he follows her out, the bartender tries to return his cash tip, suggesting he might need it tonight.
Well, it's just that Tony's one of the most expensive hookers you could find. You sure you got enough?
Eddie pushes the cash back to him and follows Toni outside. He tries to pump the brakes with her, and she realizes the bartender told him about her profession, but she explains she wasn't considering him a customer.
I'm not interested.
Oh,
No,
I wasn't even going to tell you. Listen, if it's the money that you're worried about, it's my night off.
They head to a dance club for a few more drinks, and then we hard cut to them having sex on the floor of her apartment in front of her fireplace, and then in her bathtub, and then in her bed. The sex scene is surprisingly graphic considering what the rest of the movie has been so far, because she's like riding his crotch and gyrating on top of him and moaning and stuff. And apparently there was much more of this in the original cut, but the Paramount executives were not comfortable with so much interracial sex in the movie,
of course,
and ordered them to remove all of the scenes but the montage, over the objections of director Pressman and actress Kidder.
Wow. I mean, I agree with you in terms of like this standing out.
It was very jarring.
And then we cut away, and then there's no more of that.
Yeah,
in the
they never have
entire
sex
rest
again
of the film.
after that
it's
first
just
night.
right smack dab in the middle, just like, what movie is this?
Yeah. The next morning, on his way out, he asks for her number so they might meet up again, and she's reluctant to offer it. As he walks away dejected, she blurts it out before slamming her door shut, and he repeats it for her to confirm. Then, he repeats the number out loud the whole way home so he doesn't forget it.
555-0731. 555-0731.
And I wanted her to lean out a window and scream, I wasn't giving it to the whole neighborhood.
Margot Kidder is so adorable in this movie.
She's great.
I love her. Oh, God, she was just a cutie.
It's crazy that she's not in more stuff.
Well, she had like a mental breakdown.
Yeah, she did.
You know,
but it felt like from what we've seen of her that she should have been, lead roles in so much more stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think she kind of went off the deep end and had to claw her way back.
Yeah.
So I don't blame her for not being in more stuff.
Back at the Army hospital, Eddie's roommate Terry has been discharged and is free to go home. They reminisce over all the great times they've had together in this one and only scene we've ever seen Terry for. It's like they act like they've been best friends the whole time, like this is Vinnie recovering next to him. And it's like, bye, guy that we just introduced.
Well, again, I kept waiting for the shoe to drop of, we found out what you did. You signed that paper.
Yeah.
We
found the other paper you signed.
It was like, I kept waiting for like people
Jack me
like,
off. You did it twice? You're the worst.
Oh man, that would have been a great twist if that was the paper that they had the whole time.
They turned over the wrong contract and he's like off the hook because it said jack me off. It's like, you didn't even look at this, did you? And then they're like, oh, you got us. We got to jack him off now. And he's like, what? No, you don't have to do that. No, we got to do it. We screwed up. Sorry. Eddie opens a letter from home, and inside he finds a picture of his 6-year-old daughter Lori, who he hasn't bothered to visit since he got back to America, and never will.
Yeah.
Take this character out of the movie, please. He didn't have to have a daughter. That's just super sad, and it makes me like him less for never meeting her. He heads to the apartment Lisa shares with Ray and Eddie's daughter Lori, but before he even knocks on the door, he hears them talking inside, and it sounds like a happy family. His daughter even calls Ray Daddy and says she loves him. Eddie can't bring himself to knock and turns to leave. This is supposed to be the moment, though, where he thinks better of it, or he comes back later and overcomes this hesitance to meet his own biological daughter. But he just never comes back, and those characters are gone from the whole rest of the story. He goes again to visit his mother at Greystone Nursing Home around sunset and promises her everything will be okay. That night at Toni's apartment, she asks how he's going to pay his mother's nursing home bills. She offers him a loan of $4,000 since she has money to spare, but Eddie won't accept it. She turns on a dime and gets really insulting when he won't take her money.
Why do I always fall for the goddamn pain-in-the-ass losers?
Toni, I ain't no goddamn loser.
Do you guys recall the last time we heard Richard Pryor say, "I ain't no goddamn loser"?
Was it
Busted Loose?
That's right.
I ain't no goddamn loser.
Well, do you have it?
I don't have shit but me, but I ain't no loser, and don't you tell me I am.
Wouldn't he be more of a loser if he took her money? I feel like trying, to be proud and be like, I'll take care of my own stuff is less of a loser attitude.
That it's unfair of her to call him that?
Yeah.
I thought it was really weird that she went so dark. It just feels like a situation where the writer needs them to be angry at each other very quickly. So she says something uncharacteristically insulting, and it triggers a fight between them so that he can say something mean, and now we get why they're both mad at each other. Toni is annoyed that Eddie won't let her help him, but he reminds her that everyone who promises to help him fails him.
I mean, the Army didn't give a fuck about me. My wife didn't give a fuck. So what's some rich Beverly Hills hooker gonna give a fuck about me?
Toni is hurt by his words and starts fishing through his pants on the floor for the $200 she would have charged him for sex tonight. He takes back his clothes and tells her he doesn't have $200 on him, but he'll be back with it soon, and he leaves. He rents a room at a crappy hotel under a fake name.
Ted Siegel.
The next day, he goes to a toy store in search of a fake gun. In the window, he sees a Playco toy set with several guns. Do you guys recall the last time we saw a Playco toy?
Was it the helmets in
last week's
Silent Rage?
episode?
Oh, gosh.
The kids from the boarding house where John Kirby commits his axe murders were wearing Playco space helmets.
Well, my brain went all the way back to like Incredible Shrinking Woman. I'm like, was she in some sort of playhouse?
There were a lot of toys back then.
Yeah.
Because that was a Christmas movie all of a sudden. There was a Christmas tree and a lot of toys in the living room. While checking out the toy guns, a child approaches Eddie offering a better quality fake weapon, a pistol squirt gun.
Excellent detail. Top grade plastic. Smooth trigger action.
In his motel room, Eddie practices robbing a bank with the toy. Do you guys recall the last time we saw a man talking to himself in a mirror and waving a gun around?
Was it last week's episode?
It was last week's episode, Silent Rage. Stephen First's Deputy Charlie character. We cut now to the bank, and Eddie wants to rob it, but when he gets to the teller, he can't speak.
Yes, what can I do for you? You want to make a deposit? You want to make a withdrawal?
He reaches for his gun, but accidentally pulls the trigger in his pants, squirting himself and appearing to the teller to have pissed himself.
Why would you load the water pistol?
I've never even considered that. That never occurred to me.
Of course you would. Of course there would be water in it.
But what if it was like a very serious situation and you needed to spray someone to keep them away from you? That wouldn't help. I guess to prove that it's not a gun if someone like gets a gun on you. But otherwise, you're right. No, you wouldn't have filled this. That doesn't make sense.
Luckily,
you could just drop it if you needed to prove it you weren't a threat.
Yeah, luckily I filled it with urine, so this situation is perfect.
Yeah. Blends right in. He goes to a clothing store and announces that he's here to rob them, and the old woman at the register chases him into the street, screaming at him for daring to rob her store.
Stop that! Get out of here! You're a bad boy! Don't you come back!
Nobody outside bothers to stop Eddie, and it seems like this lecture is the full extent of his punishment. Like, the last place we made an excuse for why he didn't get in trouble for trying to rob it.
Yeah.
This place, there is no excuse.
Yeah.
He tried to rob it, they know that, and they just let him go. Was he here buying clothes originally because he accidentally got the other pants wet? I mean, that would only make sense if it actually was loaded with piss. Because if it's just water, it would be dry by the time he got here. Colonel Powers calls from the base and wonders where Eddie is. Unclear why they're still forcing him to stay here every night, but Powers warns that he'll be considered AWOL if he doesn't come back every night until his official discharge. Eddie says he's got too much going on and he can't comply with their demands anymore. Eddie heads to another bank, and this time he sees a pair of guys approach the teller with a bag, and she fills it with cash. Apparently, they handle major cash transfers in some official capacity. Eddie follows them onto the street.
Yeah, he as he notices they both have guns.
Right.
And they're very chatty with the teller. The teller knows exactly who they are.
Yeah, they're like those the guards from Groundhog Day that Phil starts following around. At a second location, he loses sight of the men for a moment while they trade bags.
Hey, would you do me a favor? Will you drop off the cash to Margie? Pick me up in a couple, will you? I gotta go take a crap, okay?
Don't fall in.
Yeah.
See, but it doesn't make sense that they switch bags. He would have given them both bags.
That's true.
Because the bags are of equal value.
Actually, one bag is worth twice as much.
Yeah.
But also, why take any bag of value into the bathroom with
Which
you?
one of these do I want to smell like shit? This one. Eddie assumes the fatter of the two men still has the bag with the cash and follows him to the bathroom. Eddie sees the bag under the bathroom stall door and snatches it away. He puts a gun to the man's head and demands his weapon and clothing. Another recurring gag is that the fat guy has some sort of intestinal distress and his shit stink is particularly strong. While he's still stripping in the stall, the other man, Mickey, played by Matt Clark, who has already turned in the cash bag, enters the bathroom.
Holy shit! What the fuck's this green fog? Somebody dying here?
Mickey, quick! Use your gun, asshole!
On what, asshole?
On me, asshole!
Eddie surprises the man from behind and disarms Mickey before ordering him into the neighboring stall to strip as well. Eddie wants them to stay in these stalls for at least 10 minutes after he's gone, or his friend outside will shoot them.
You got it? You got it? I don't want you to get to a doctor, fatso, because something done crawled up inside of you and died.
Outside the bathroom, he shouts to his imaginary partner, the ghost of Vinnie, guarding the door. He tosses the men's clothes and guns out the window to the street below.
He's very convincing, too. He's like, Vinnie, I'm coming out. Don't
shoot me.
Don't shoot. Like, he's like, it's like, oh, wow, the way he's setting up this con is very believable because that's how I would react if I did have someone out there with a guy. I'm coming out. Don't shoot me.
Yeah. I actually didn't catch on my first pass that he was using Vinnie's name for the fake partner, but I also feel like if Vinnie hadn't died, that he would be here helping him rob these people right now. In a way, he still is. He rushes with the bag over to Toni's apartment and announces that he's finally a winner. He tells her the bag he's carrying contains $100,000 cash, which is over $700,000 today, and she's already disappointed in him.
Wait till you see Lincoln, Jefferson, Washington. I mean, my favorite white people.
But when he gets the bag open, it doesn't have cash. It's full of treasury notes valued around $200,000, or $1.5 million today. He grabbed the wrong one.
Also, Lincoln, Jefferson.
You think there's Washingtons in here?
Washington are like talking more about Grant and Benjamin.
Yeah. It reminds me of in Super Fuzz when they're making counterfeit ones out at sea, packing them into fish. He realizes these can be exchanged for cash and asks if Toni knows anywhere he could make that trade. Toni's very upset with him and claims it's not about the money. She worries he's putting himself in danger.
Also, I believe that they're bearer bonds, so you could just take them to go to any other bank.
But would they be traceable,
I was
though?
going to say, they're probably got a serial code on them or something, so as soon as they were gone, they were reported missing, and they would flag that it's him.
But there are still places you can use them because they're legal American tender, I would think. Take them to like a gold place. Buy a bunch of gold.
I mean, this is, supposedly this is, the 70s were taking place. And so if he got across the country fast enough,
it wouldn't be traceable.
The community, that's the whole concept of Catch Me If You Can.
Right.
Was he was forging checks from other districts so
before they could even verify.
The time difference was too much.
She tells him he's making his problems worse, and he says he still thinks her problems are worse than his.
I don't believe you can take care of yours, though. I mean, look around. You whore for a living.
Again, he's pushed her over the line, and she leaves him here, demanding he be gone when she gets back. Eddie heads back to the bar and asks the bartender if he has connections to exchange treasury notes for cash. The bartender gives him the number for Tommy Morelli in Nevada. He warns Eddie these people are serious and not to be trifled with. Sometime later, Eddie meets with Tommy Morelli and his assistant Sal in a dark parking garage. He presents them with a sample of his treasury notes and claims to have enough to add up to $200,000. They lowball him with an offer of $80,000, but he threatens to walk for any less than 50 cents on the dollar, $100,000.
That's a pretty good deal.
I think so.
I think 50 cents on the dollar is a very reasonable deal.
Because you're fully laundering this whole set of stolen cash. Of course, they're probably giving him stolen cash too. That's like marked consecutive bills they robbed from somewhere else. And then he just gets arrested for that. They agree to the price, and he calls them later to invite them to room 205 at the Cromwell Hotel. He tells them his friend Vinnie will be waiting with him for the cash. Tommy and Sal are late to the delivery, and it's making Eddie nervous. When they do show up, they bring multiple cars, and Eddie thinks it's a setup. He calls Toni to apologize and explain the situation he's found himself in, and she gives him advice.
I think there's a couple of guys on their way up here, and they're gonna kill me.
Hey, Eddie. I don't know what the hell's going on, but get out of there fast. Just run.
Run? It's the best idea I heard all day. That's just what I'm gonna do, baby.
He tries to collect his things to leave, but it's too late. Sal and a new guy named Paolo are here now. They show Eddie the cash, and he hands over the treasury notes.
This is probably one of the more realistic depictions of a briefcase full of cash that I've seen. Like,
because it's pretty shallow.
Well, no, but the bills, like, they're not in like these perfectly like flat iron pressed stacks. They're
like pocket cash.
Yeah, it's pocket cash that's been bound together, like when we were counting money from the till of Blockbuster. Like, I mean, this is like, this looks like legit money.
Yeah,
like it. Whenever you see like freshly cut banknotes that are always just like completely like a deck of cards almost.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Like that's what they flip through it and
straight from the treasury.
Mm-hmm.
Before the deal is done, Eddie admits he saw the cars outside and doesn't expect a fair deal here.
Yeah, I got one question.
What's that?
Do I get out of here alive?
What do you think, kid?
The men start talking like they plan on tossing Eddie out the window.
I don't understand. I mean, the Army fucks with me. The VC fuck with me. And now you two pricks are gonna fuck with me. What is this, Hump Eddie week?
Paolo throws an arm around Eddie's neck to choke him out, but Eddie fights back. These men seem to fight in slow motion because the choreography is terrible and everyone's moving gratingly slowly. While Eddie wails on Paolo, Sal throws a cord around his neck to strangle him, but still, Eddie comes out on top and beats both men unconscious before leaving the room. And that second, knee to the head at the door, it's a real brutal kick.
See, I feel like this could have used some, scenes in the Vietnam and the POW camp where he's being, tortured, being choked from behind and things like that.
And defending himself in some way.
Yeah. It's like, this is nothing to what...
Right.
Compared to what... Because we've never seen him as a fighter.
Right.
Obviously, you're fighting for your life.
And these are also, the family sent over their fighter guy.
Mm-hmm.
The reason this Paolo guy wasn't there before is because he's the muscle. And you're able to just take out the muscle on a whim. Someone in the hallway asks if everything's all right, and Eddie lies that they're fine. He phones the police to report he's killed his wife and dog in the neighboring room 207 of the Cromwell Hotel to call them here to find the unconscious goons.
He dials 911. I don't know if he would
1982. We can start calling 911.
Yeah, so I don't know. He would have been in Vietnam when 911 was created.
And the film takes place in 72, though.
That's what I'm saying. I think the first 911 call was in 74.
Okay. So that's just a mistake.
Yeah, so he would have not known. He's only been out of Vietnam for a week.
Unless he's been out for 10 years. And we just missed a time jump. Eddie collects the cash and the treasury notes and leaves on his own. He puts on his uniform, intending to return to the base. Leaving the Hotel Cromwell, Eddie stupidly locks eyes with the other mafiosos across the street and even salutes them before disappearing into a crowd. Now that they've seen him in uniform, they're much more likely to recognize and track him down later, since his appearance is known by the general public. Toni skids up in a convertible to give him a ride to the base. Now, the mobsters get a good look at the neighborhood's famous prostitute, her car, and probably even her license plate. As they drive away, Eddie stupidly flaunts the cash he took and lets handfuls of it blow away out of the car in the wind. For some reason, Toni is proud of him now. When the last time he stole cash, she was worried he'd put himself in danger. He's obviously in much more danger now.
And so is she.
Right. He tucks all the stolen treasury notes into an envelope and returns them to the bank with an enclosed note thanking them for the loan. In his office at the base, Colonel Powers smiles wide as he opens a second package containing Eddie's uniform.
God damn it, Eddie, you did it.
What did he do?
Yeah.
Why is Powers happy? Did he go back to the base last night? Or is he AWOL? Is he in trouble for leaving the base?
He's AWOL for sure.
Or does returning your clothes mean you're free to go, like the opposite of Dobby's house elf contract?
I don't understand here how he's gonna be able to get away with any of this unless he just leaves the country.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the plan, I guess?
I know, but then did you just dump... Well, I guess...
All he had to do was go back to the base, 2 more nights,
Mm-hmm.
and then he would have been home free. But for some reason, instead, he returned his uniform and went AWOL.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
I just feel like they didn't know how to wrap it up.
I guess.
It's like we got to finish this movie because
just show him at the base going, all right, it's been 10 days, soldier. We're going to get your back pay taken care of as soon as we can. It's like, take your time. I got it covered. The staff at the Greystone nursing home show Eddie's mother the cash they've received in the mail and announce that her expenses are fully paid.
But for how long? Is this just back pay? Is he still going to pay?
No, he just has the $100,000 cash. So that's only going to cover, the next, what?
But also, I honestly think he has to, leave the country. He has to flee in order to not get arrested for what he's done at this point.
Well, what has he done? He took the money from the mob.
He's AWOL.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just saying, he's got to go. Did you just dump a pile of money on your mom and never going to see her again? I
mean, that'll cover her for 8 years, and she's not going to be there in 9 years.
I thought you cared about your mom.
No. Not at all. Here's your money, Mom. The money is your son now. We cut back to a shot from earlier after Eddie stole the bag in the bathroom of him walking down the street excitedly, and then we freeze frame for the credits to roll. The end. That's some kind of hero. It does seem like it was rewritten pretty drastically, probably during production even. And I think there's stuff to like here, and there's confusing stuff here. But I still have a hard time categorizing it even. Is this a comedy? Is this a drama? Is this supposed to be like a serious, heartfelt story? Or is this just jokes? Because if you're trying to tell the story of how hard it is for veterans in America coming back from the war, then we should present the obstacles realistically, right?
Yeah.
Because the most glowing reviews I could find were like, oh, this is highlighting a problem that people aren't talking about enough in America, that these people are being treated poorly. They're not being looked after serving our country. But he also doesn't apply to a job. He doesn't apply to a job in the whole movie.
Well, he can't because he still has a job.
What is his job?
He's still in the military.
Right, but he's not getting paid.
Right. But I don't think you can get another job.
You can't work 2 jobs?
I don't think so. I don't know. I
mean, he doesn't have to be at the base 24 hours a day. I think he could tell them, I'm going to go work at the grocery store. But instead he's like, so far these are the jobs I came up with. Borrow money from a bank, steal money from a bank. Those are the only 2 methods that he ever uses to try and find money to pay the backlog that he owes his mom. I just feel like...
Well, they did put a sense of urgency that he had literally days to pay them the back pay
right,
or she'd be
that's
kicked
true.
out. So,
and for some reason they're like, your teeth are so fucked up, you need 10 days worth of dental surgery before you can go.
So they did kind of tie his hands here in terms of getting money quickly, but he has also offered out, that Toni wanted a loan of the money.
Right, yeah. So for him to pass on that and then to go steal it from a bank, and it's like, why was it okay to take $100,000 loan from a bank but not borrow $4,000 from your girlfriend? It's a weird choice. But yeah, that's that one. I think I would have enjoyed it more if it had been a straight dramatic role for him.
But I think that would have been harder. In the sense of, I think that you get Richard Pryor because you want, and I think part of that rewriting is that this, we got this really serious drama. It's
sure.
like, we got Richard Pryor. It's like, oh, well then we got to put jokes in.
Right. Because otherwise it's going to be Cable Guy.
Yeah.
And everyone's going to be mad that he's not all righty-thenning the whole way through the movie. That makes sense.
So I feel like the time for Richard Pryor is being Richard Pryor. And really the most of it to me was with his pants down at the beginning. The other stuff, when he's in the dental chair and he's like, come on, man. That's both the frustration of the moment, but also having your teeth worked on,
right?
which I think is actually kind of funny that they're hassling him during this moment.
Yeah, I feel like, can't we have this conversation in 10 minutes?
Yeah, exactly.
When this drill's not in my face.
And the other him panicking, trying to rob stores.
Yeah.
Again, because we don't know, we don't have any kind of sense of, we don't really know what kind of person he is. That's part of the problem is that the only sense that we got early on was that he's paranoid and kind of cowardly in Vietnam, but then he goes through this bout where he's in the POW camp where he's like standing up for his friends.
But we at least know that before the war, he was like responsible enough to like open and maintain a bookstore, like a relatively successful bookstore.
But then when the bank's being robbed, he's like, oh no, what do I do? Like he's like panicking and like.
But he's also helping people get to the floor and.
Yeah, I just wanted to know more about
who he was
and what his capabilities are, because again, he was a soldier, so he was trained to fight, and so when he's fighting those guys, it's like, okay, maybe that's some of his training, or maybe that was some of the tactics he had to learn to survive in the POW camp.
Yeah.
I think it would have been nice to see something like that. Like that's where he learned to fight.
Like see them torturing him in a specific way, and then these mobsters try to torture him that way, and he's resistant.
Yeah, it's just being choked or getting in more fights in the compound.
Sure.
Just so that he is a capable fighter.
Right. That makes sense.
Because otherwise, I didn't really like. He's like he's handling.
Or like he's getting beaten by everybody until Vinnie shows up and teaches him to fight.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But I actually, I kind of liked the movie a little bit.
I was fine with the movie.
I think this is a rarity, but I'm going to be the only thumbs down on this one.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. I was totally fine watching this movie all the way through. Like, I did not hate it the way I knew you hated it.
I mean, it's not even that I hated it. It's that I think when I watch a movie, I try to predict where it's going too often. Maybe that's a result of doing this podcast. I'm like trying to like preemptively figure out, I see what they're doing. Like they're aiming for this. And it's like every time I was like, they're not doing it. Okay. Oh, and they're not doing that either. Okay. Well, what are they doing? And then it was over all of a sudden. I was like, what? It just ends with he just robs a bank and that's the end? All of his problems are solved because he robbed a bank. Okay.
Well,
great.
That's the lesson.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me watching it differently than you, because I'm not writing down every single thing that happens, I'm like, just go with the flow. It's fine.
That's the smarter way to watch it anyway.
I don't care that it's dramatic. Like, it can just be whatever it is.
Just let it be, dude.
Yeah, it's a thumbs up for me. I mean, compared to some of the movies we've watched, like I was like, this is fine. This is a fine movie.
It is fine. In fact, it's a lot better than most of the movies we watch.
What are we thinking Letterboxd on this one?
Speaking of being better than most of the movies we watch,
I
have it in... What place do I have it in?
57.
No, I have it in 31 out of 57. So it's really kind of in the middle. I have it below Cat People and above Missing.
All right.
I have it really high compared.
Oh, boy.
I have it at 18th, which this is going to sound ridiculous.
Oh, boy.
It's below Mephisto.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
But above Splits. So the fact
oh my
that
God,
Splits
those are right next to each other?
Yeah.
You are an enigma, Richard.
That is the ridiculous part.
Oh my God.
Because like after Splits, it's like a real steep like collapse.
Drop off. Yeah, that's incredible.
So the fact that it's above Splits is like, and below, there's going to be a big gap eventually between Mephisto and Splits.
That's where you get that zigzag line on the graph.
Yeah, it's like the tangential line. It's like curves and then drops again.
This is my perpetual problem with this year. I accidentally left Splits kind of way up there, and I forgot to move it down underneath everything. So now I have a bunch of stuff that I think is probably better than Splits underneath it, and I never know if I should go above it or below it because I left it in the wrong spot.
Yeah, that's tricky. Well, obviously, at the end of the year, we're allowed to make whatever adjustments we want. So if you have a better place for Splits, just let it be the one you have to fix.
Yeah, Vice Squad and Aftermath and Island of Blood all kind of wound up in this weird spot in the middle because where I left Splits.
I have it in 45th out of 57, which is just under A Little Sex and just above Green Ice. Our director here was Michael Pressman. At this point, he directed a Bad News Bears sequel, and so far on the show, Those Lips, Those Eyes. Next season, he's back with Dr. Detroit, and later mostly TV movies until TMNT 2, Secret of the Ooze, and then lots more television on celebrated series like Law & Order, Damages, In Treatment, Weeds, Grey's Anatomy, Blue Bloods, Justified, Elementary, and most recently Chicago Med. The writer here was Robert Boris. 9 years earlier, he'd written Electra Glide in Blue and then taken a long break. After this, he writes Dr. Detroit for director Pressman, and later TV and direct-to-video titles, nothing I was especially familiar with. The other writer was also the novelist James Kirkwood. We've actually seen him a couple times on the show as a psychiatrist in Oh God Book 2 and an MC in Mommy Dearest. He co-wrote the book A Chorus Line, which was later adapted into the celebrated Broadway production with music from Marvin Hamlish and lyrics by Edward Kleben, which ran for over 6,000 performances and was the longest-running Broadway show until it was beat out by Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats 14 years later. He also has credits for adaptations of his novels into 1986's There Must Be a Pony and P.S. Your Cat is Dead. I just liked both of those titles a lot. The music here came from Patrick Williams. He previously composed Evel Knievel in 1971, and so far on the show, the similarly titled Hero at Large, Holy Moses, How to Beat the High Cost of Living, another movie about people turning to crime instead of getting jobs, Used Cars, It's My Turn, and Charlie Chan and the Curse of the Dragon Queen. He's back this season for The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, and a second Richard Pryor title with The Toy, and later John Waters' Crybaby, and then mostly TV stuff. Cinematographer here was King Baggett. So far we've seen his first 2 cinematographer credits with Cheech and Chong's next movie and The Hand. After this, he lights Dr. Detroit, The Last Starfighter for director Nick Castle, from the cast of our recent Dark Star review, Revenge of the Nerds, Oh God, You Devil, and vice versa. The editor here was Christopher Greenbury. He previously cut The Muppet Movie, and so far on the show Where the Buffalo Roam. After this, he cuts Dr. Detroit, Smokey and the Bandit 3, The Woman in Red for director Gene Wilder, Haunted Honeymoon, Naked Gun 2.5, Loaded Weapon 1, Dumb and Dumber, The Babysitter's Club, Biodome, and then he's basically the Farrelly Brothers editor for a while. Kingpin, There's Something About Mary. He edited American Beauty. He edited Me, Myself, and Irene, Shallow Hal, Stuck on You. And sadly, he passed away at 55 a month before the release of his final film, Wild Hogs. Richard Pryor played Eddie Keller. Before this, he was in Car Wash, Silver Streak, Greased Lightning, California Suite, and The Muppet Movie. So far on the podcast, we've seen him acting in The Wiz, Holy Moses, In God We Trust, Stir Crazy, and Bustin' Loose before this. He also wrote Blazing Saddles with Mel Brooks, which we covered on Patreon. He'll show up later this season in The Toy, and later still in Superman 3, Brewster's Millions, and more Gene Wilder team-ups. His last film was David Lynch's Lost Highway, but his last appearance was as a character on Norm Macdonald's sitcom Norm in 1999. But he's likely best known as Jimmy the Gravedigger in Mad Dog Time.
So I think California Suite is one of those like all-star cast ones, right?
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Margot Kidder played Toni. Before this, she was in Sisters, The Dion Brothers, The Great Waldo Pepper, The Reincarnation of Peter Proud, Superman, and The Amityville Horror. We've seen her recently in our December Patreon review of Black Christmas and in regular episodes for Willie and Phil and Superman 2. She's back this season for Heartaches, and next season she reunites with Pryor for Superman 3, but I don't think they have any scenes together.
No. In fact, I can't remember if Superman 3 is... No, she's in quite a bit of that. One of the Superman, she just dips out.
Yeah, I think that's Quest for Peace.
Yeah, she's just like, oh, by the way, I'm going on vacation. Goodbye.
Yeah, I'm going back to Niagara Falls. That was a great hotel we stayed at. So she returns for Superman 4 Quest for Peace for a halftime job. She's in Maverick. She's the voice of Gaia on Captain Planet. She appears for a 2-part episode of Smallville, and she also appears in Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. Ray Sharkey was Vinnie. Before this, he was in Paradise Alley. We've seen him so far in Heartbeat, Willie and Phil, The Idolmaker, and Love and Money. Later, he's in Wise Guys. He was the Grand Vizier in an episode of Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater, and his last IMDb credit was in Cop and a Half before he passed away at 40 in 93 due to complications from AIDS. Ronny Cox played Colonel Powers. We saw him for one of his first films in our Patreon review of Deliverance, and more recently in Taps and The Beast Within. He also appears in The Car, but he's probably best known as Lieutenant Bogomil in the Beverly Hills Cop series, or as Dick Jones in the RoboCop series. 2 cop series. He's also Cohagen in Total Recall. Cohagen, give these people air! Lynne Moody played Lisa. She's back later this season in White Dog. She was Patricia Williams in 46 episodes of Knots Landing, and later provides voice work in A Pup Named Scooby-Doo. She also had a 20-episode run as Florence Campbell on General Hospital. Olivia Cole played Jessie. That's his mother that lives at the convalescence home. She was actually 2 years younger than Pryor, playing her son here. Before this, she was Matilda in Roots, and after this, she was Mom Sally in North and South Book 1. Paul Benjamin played Leon. Before this, he's in Midnight Cowboy, The Anderson Tapes, Friday Foster, Leadbelly, and Escape from Alcatraz. He's back later for Deadly Force, Do the Right Thing, The Super, Rosewood, and he was in 3 ERs. Not the hospitals, the show. Shelly Batt played Olivia. We've seen her previously as Girl in Disco in Saturday Night Fever, and Dulcie in Loving Couples, Charlotte in Honky Tonk Freeway, and Girl in True Confessions. This was her last feature film credit. Susan Berlin played Jeanette. We saw her last as the redhead in Those Lips, Those Eyes from the same director. Mary Betten played Lady Teller. We've seen her as Miss Nichols in Little Darlings, and after this mostly TV, except she's a housekeeper wife in Arthur 2 on the Rocks. Herbie Braha played Honcho number 2. I think those are the guys that harass him at the bar are credited as Honchos. Before this, he was in Rock and Roll High School and on the show in The Howling as a porno cashier. He's back this season in Beach Girls, or The Beach Girls, and later as another cashier in Child's Play 2. Anthony Charnota played Base Commander. We saw him last as Master's Assistant in Looker, and later he's Lou Gennaro in The Deadpool, the final Dirty Harry film so far. I'm sure he's about to make another one.
Right? It seems inevitable at this point.
Yeah. Matt Clark played Mickey. We love Matt Clark. Before this, he's in the Heat of the Night, Will Penny, Monty Walsh, Jeremiah Johnson, The Life and Times of Judge Roy Bean, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, Emperor of the North. We've seen him so far in White Lightning, Brubaker, Ruckus, The Legend of the Lone Ranger, and An Eye for an Eye. He's back this season for Honky Tonk Man, and later he's Secdef in The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension. He's Stuart Hiller in Tough Turf, Uncle Henry in Return to Oz, and a bartender in Back to the Future 3. Jude Farese played Bandit number 1. He was Carmine in Hide in Plain Sight, and he's back this season for Looking to Get Out, and later Maniac Cop 2. John Fujioka played Captain Tan Tai. He was in the 1964 McHale's Navy film and 9 episodes of the series. He's in Midway, Future World, MacArthur as Emperor Hirohito, and we've seen him so far in The Last Flight of Noah's Ark, The Octagon, and The Private Eyes. I think he was the chef in The Private Eyes.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, that's...
Later, he's in American Ninja, Mortal Kombat, Baywatch Nights, and Pearl Harbor, Michael Bay's Pearl Harbor. Raymond Guth played Motel Clerk. He was in The Reavers, Monty Walsh, Emperor of the North, Funny Lady, and Silver Streak before this. Most recently, he provides the voices of Ducky Splicers in BioShock, and Mike Novak, Gideon Wyborn, and Tommy Hanrahan in BioShock 2. You know those characters?
Well, what were the characters again? Sorry.
In the second one or the first one?
Second one.
Mike Novak, Gideon Wyborn, and Tommy Hanrahan.
They don't sound familiar, but splicers, like there's just a lot of British New England-ish, not the mid-Atlantic accent-y kind of like splicers running around.
Anne Haney played Monica Lewis. We've seen her so far in Hopscotch and more recently in Making Love, but I think she's definitely most recognizable as the caseworker, Mrs. Sellner from Mrs. Doubtfire. After that, she was Mrs. Chambers in Gus Van Sant's Psycho remake and Woman in Bathroom in the Out of Towners remake. Mary Jackson played Frances. Before this, she was in Airport, Fun with Dick and Jane, Audrey Rose, and after this, she's in Big Top Pee-wee and The Exorcist 3. Peter Jason was the other honcho, the one that does most of the talking. We've already seen him in The Baltimore Bullet, The Long Riders, Nice Dreams, Butterfly, and Mommy Dearest. Later this season, he's back for 48 Hours, and later still, Angel, Streets of Fire, The Karate Kid, Dreamscape, Brewster's Millions, Prince of Darkness, Sunset, Alien Nation, They Live, The Hunt for Red October, Arachnophobia, In the Mouth of Madness, Congo, Mortal Kombat, Ghosts of Mars, but I recognize him first as Con Stapleton from 26 episodes of Deadwood. More recently, he was Senator Sherwood in Jurassic Park 5, and he was in 5 episodes of Baskets. You ever watch Baskets?
No.
You know that show? It's Zach Galifianakis and Louis Anderson.
Oh.
It's I think it was an FX show or something like that, some cable network. Supposed to be a good show, though. Nan Martin played Hilda. We've seen her now in A Small Circle of Friends and Loving Couples. Later, she's in All of Me, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors, and she was Mrs. Louder on The Drew Carey Show. Bill Morey played Major Ryan. He's Deacon in Death Race 2000, assorted characters in 18 G.I. Joe episodes, and Mr. Rivers in Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. Kenneth O'Brien was Jim, the bartender. We've seen him now as Greer in The Sting, and Walt Bennett in The Idolmaker with Ray Sharkey, and he's back this season as Porter in Airplane 2. Anthony Ponzini played Sal. After this, he shows up in Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, and Desert Hearts. Kario Salem played Young Soldier. We saw him last as a Sheik in Underground Aces, where I mentioned that he also has screenwriting credits, including Chasing Mavericks, which is amusing because I was hired to write a competitive wakeboarding film, and Curtis Hanson was very close to attached to ours when financing got shaky, and he left to direct Chasing Mavericks. So this guy stole Curtis Hanson from me, the director of The Little Dragons. John Van Ness played Power's aide. Before this, he was in End of the World and Tourist Trap, both of which have posters hanging in the background of Fade to Black. We've seen him so far in Brubaker, Ruckus, and The Postman Always Rings Twice. He was the bike cop who almost caught the leads in the act of murder. He's the one who pulls up and he's like, oh, what's this sign going on you got here? Oh, what's that sound, a cat? Oh, sometimes they kind of sound like babies, don't they? And he's like, yeah, I guess they kind of do sometimes. He's back this season for X-Ray and later in The Hitcher, Sunset, and Alligator 2. Sandy Ward played Colonel Maxwell. We saw him as a studio guard in Earthquake and regular episode Holy Moses. He's back this season for Airplane 2 and later Cujo and Police Academy 2. David Byrd played Dorman. He's back next season for The Man with Two Brains and later All of Me, Big Top Pee-wee, Tango and Cash. He's Dr. Hugo Bronfenbrenner in The Hudsucker Proxy and later Lawnmower Man 2, Lost Highway, and a couple episodes of Seinfeld and Everybody Loves Raymond. Alberto Isaac played VC Guard number 2. He was Joseph Chan in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. That's a great show. Nicholas Meal, or Nicholas Melee, played Officer. We've seen him in Holy Moses, All Night Long, and Mommy Dearest. Later, he's Dennis Johnson in Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5. Bill M. Ryusaki played basketball player. That's the tall guard. We saw him last in Force 5, and later he's a Wing Kong Hatchet Man in Big Trouble in Little China, and a member of Kane's gang in RoboCop. He's also Mr. Hiroshi in Being John Malkovich. Tim Thomerson played Cal, who just wanted to take a shit on the battlefield. This was his second film with Pryor after Car Wash in 1976. We've seen him so far in Carney and Fade to Black. He's back this season for Jekyll and Hyde Together Again and Honky Tonk Man. Later he's in Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared Sin, The Osterman Weekend, Rhinestone, Iron Eagle, Rat Boy, Near Dark, The Transfer Series, and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Jonathan Goldsmith played Tommy Morelli uncredited. For some reason, Tommy and Paolo aren't credited in the film, but according to IMDb, Tommy is played by Jonathan Goldsmith, a.k.a. the most interesting man in the world from those Dos Equis commercials. We also covered his work in MacGyver episode Out in the Cold. I think that's everything for Some Kind of Hero. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, you can find all our socials at linktree/vintagevideopod. If you enjoy what we're doing, consider giving us a review on iTunes. I don't believe it helps visibility, but it's good for morale. And if you really like the show, maybe you should join our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/vintagevideopodcast for access to all our monthly 70s reviews and a hand in choosing next month's film. Patrons are currently choosing between Brannigan, Douglas Hickok's British action thriller about Chicago detective Brannigan sent to London to escort an American mobster through the extradition process. It stars John Wayne, John Vernon, Richard Attenborough, and Mel Ferrer. Deep Red, Dario Argento's giallo film about a musician and a journalist on the trail of a serial killer in black gloves. It stars David Hemmings, Daria Nicolodi, Gabrielle Lavia, and a soundtrack from The Goblins.
Did I make you guys watch that one?
Yeah,
you guys watched it. I think I passed out that
Yeah,
night.
maybe you weren't awake. I was like, I'm pretty sure I made you guys watch that.
Yeah, because I had that terrified of there's a scene with a puppet.
Right.
Walking briskly towards camera, and I was like, no. I was like, I did not
Sheer
like
panic. Escape to Witch Mountain. John Huff's fantasy sci-fi Disney adventure adapted from Alexander Key's novel of the same name about a pair of orphans with superpowers being chased by an evil billionaire. It stars Eddie Albert, Ray Milland, Donald Pleasance, and Kim Richards. Funny Lady. Herbert Ross's biopic sequel to William Wyler's Funny Girl, chronicling another chapter in the life of comedian-singer Fanny Brice in 1930s America. It stars Barbara Streisand, James Caan, Roddy McDowall, and Ben Vereen. The Great Waldo Pepper. George Roy Hill's period drama about an American pilot who, in the wake of World War I, forms an unlikely partnership with a former German ace fighter pilot flying planes together for fledgling Hollywood's film industry. It stars Robert Redford, Bo Svensson, Margot Kidder from this film, and Susan Sarandon. Mirror. Andrei Tarkovsky's avant-garde drama film about a dying poet contemplating the events of his life and the transformation of Russia over his lifetime. It stars Margarita Terrakova, Philippe Yankovsky, and Ignat Deniltsev. Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Terry's Gilliam and Jones' beloved British comedy film, recounting the Arthurian legend through the lens of the world-famous Monty Python comedy troupe. It stars the Pythons, Graham Chapman, John Cleese, Terry Gilliam, Eric Idle, Terry Jones, and Michael Palin, in order of volume. Rancho Deluxe, Frank Perry's neo-Western comedy about a pair of modern-day cattle rustlers who target a wealthy Montana rancher. It stars Jeff Bridges, Sam Waterston, Elizabeth Ashley, Clifton James, and Slim Pickens. I want to see Clifton James and Slim Pickens in a movie together. Rosebud, Otto Preminger's action thriller adapted by Preminger's own son from the novel of the same name about 5 girls kidnapped by the Palestinian Liberation Army being tracked down by an undercover CIA agent. It stars Peter O'Toole, Richard Attenborough again, Cliff Gorman, Claude Dauphine, Isabelle Huppert, and Kim Cattrall. That's really early for both of them, so they must be 2 of the 5 girls. Tommy, Ken Russell's psychedelic musical fantasy film, adapted from The Who's 1969 album of the same name, about a pinball champion born deaf, dumb, and blind who finds himself at the center of a religious movement. Terror of Mechagodzilla, Ishiro Honda's kaiju sequel about Godzilla's face-off against the freshly resurrected alien Robo-Godzilla known as Mechagodzilla. It stars Katsuhiko Sasaki, Tomoko Ai, Akihiko Hirata, Katsumasa Uchida, featuring Toru Kawai as Godzilla and Kazunara Mori as Mechagodzilla 2.0. Or The Yakuza, Sidney Pollack's neo-noir crime drama about an American PI who travels to Japan after decades away to investigate the kidnapping of a friend's young daughter by Japan's notorious Yakuza crime syndicate, each of which will be celebrating their 50th anniversaries next month. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you'll join us next time when we'll be discussing Wolf Lake, which IMDb describes like so. War veterans visit a lakeside cabin for a week of shooting, drinking, etc., but find the cabin being looked after by a young caretaker named David. When David's status as a war deserter is revealed, all hell breaks loose. We leave you now with a trailer for Wolf Lake.
This is Wolf Lake.
I want to tell you something. When I come up here, I forget all my problems.
Some people might call it heaven on earth.
You guys gonna go hunting, or are you gonna start a war?
For the hunters and their prey,
Who's that? She works here. So do I.
it's their own private hell. Here in the wilderness, something happens.
I've got to get you out of here.
I love you, David.
What are you gonna do, Charlie?
I honest to God don't know.
I never should have taken this job.
Charlie, let's pack up and get the hell out of here.
I know him. And there's just no telling what he'll do. I'm not afraid of Charlie.
You're not gonna get out of these woods ever!
Now, you just think that over.
What can turn a respected businessman, a law-abiding citizen, into a cold-blooded murderer? What happened to Charlie? How could he do it? How far will he go? Can he be stopped? Rod Steiger, Wolf Lake.